Well, two things are now certain. One is that my Revenant is great. Try and guess what build I'm using. And two, the plot of the story is starting to thicken. But if you want to know why, make sure you stick to the end. So in this episode, we're going through Living World Season 2 with my kawaii looking Revenant. In episode 1 we finished the personal story as a Norn Elementalist. But then in episode 2 we did the Living World Season 1 as our new human Revenant. But before we start, a quick word from our sponsor for today's video.
Got him!
Did you really think I have a sponsor for today's video, you silly sausage? We don't even have 100 subscribers yet. Which reminds me that if you enjoy the content, hit the little subscribe button. But enough begging for subscribers like a hot tub streamer on Twitch, let's get right into it. Mere moments after Scarlet drew her final breath, the roar of an elder dragon was heard across Styria. Although the true motive of Scarlet's schemes are not yet clear, one thing is, her plan all along was to raise the elder dragon Mordremoth. I received another note from the cryptic E, asking me to investigate a mysterious incursion at the edge of Brisbane wildlands. I joined Marjorie, Kashmir, Bram, Rox and Timey at the Seraph outpost in the Tangled Roots, and worked with them to defeat the hostile Inquest crew that were harassing them. Marjorie, Kashmir and I investigated the Zephyrite airship crash in the Dry Top. Wreckage and bodies were scattered around the canyon, making it difficult to piece together the sequence of events. We learned of a Sylvari named Aaron who attacked the ship's crew and set off the explosive that took down the aircraft. We have reasons to believe this murderous saboteur is after the Zephyrite leader, the Master of Peace, who apparently went missing. I headed to a nearby town called Prosperity to find clues that could point me towards their leader. Once there, I found the body of a poor merchant who was presumably killed by the saboteur. Inside the nearby mine, I found a frightened woman who witnessed the murder. She said the killer was chasing the Master of Peace and that I should head towards Spurband Canyon. I rejoined my group to search for the Master before the saboteur could catch him. We managed to find Aaron and pursued him deeper into the canyon. His behavior seemed manic, almost like Scarlet's during her final days. He fought fiercely, but ultimately lost. The Master of Peace appeared out of nowhere and told us that Aaron wanted great power but was refused. He didn't explain much of what he meant, nor did he say where he was headed next. I searched the Sylvari's corpse. I found some animal hairs that presumably came from the livestock back in Prosperity. Once we returned, the townspeople revealed that a strange Sylvari kept a room here, but no one has dared to go in, even though the Sylvari hasn't been seen for ages. I asked them about Aaron, but instead learned that Scarlet rented that room. It was full of her belongings. She left behind a holographic journal that chronicled her transformation from a lab assistant named Ciara to the universally loaded Scarlet that awakened Mordremoth. Scarlet was searching for magical energies here, and seemed to have found something significant near where the miners were digging. I located a miner named Tosca, not far away from town. She said that the mine mysteriously caved in, but she suspects that Scarlet may have found another way in. While I was questioning her, the town along with several waypoints have been attacked by thorny vines. We headed back to check on Timey. Most of the people were either dead or fled, but she was okay, despite the destruction of the town. The appeal caused by the vines, however, revealed a secret passage behind Scarlet's bookcase. In the tunnels under her room, I found a map tracing her route to some unknown destination to the southwest, to a place that the Maguman centaurs called the Caverns of Shining Lights. Once there, Timey realized that the waypoints worked because they were placed on ley lines, and the ones that were not placed on ley lines didn't work and were subsequently removed. Mordremoth vines also followed the ley lines in the waypoint's path, branching off to Fort Salma and Fort Concordia. Our group decided to split up at this point, with Marjorie and Kashmir going to meet up with Belinda at Fort Salma. while Rox, Bram and I go to Fort Concordia. Timmy will stay behind at the lab to investigate it further. After we secured Concordia, I fought my way into Fort Salmo to fend off a monstrous Mordrum Thrasher alongside Marjorie and Kashmir, only to discover that we were too late to save Belinda. Marjorie said she's going to return home to bury her fallen sister, while Kashmir and I will head back to the Dry Tops to rejoin our friends. I could tell Kashmir was upset that Marjorie was leaving her behind. I feel like the relentless fighting and the sudden loss is taking its toll on their relationship. In Scarlet's lab at the Leyline hub, Timmy started developing a device to recalibrate the waypoints so that they don't attract Mordrum. She also discovered Omad's machine, the device that Scarlet used to see the eternal alchemy. I unwittingly entered the device and experienced my own cosmic vision, one that included the Pale Tree and a handful of mysterious orbs, each representing an Elder Dragon. Me, Kashmir, Rox and Bram decided that we need to meet at the Grove for an audience with the Pale Tree. Once there, we discussed the growing threat of Mordremat with the Pale Tree. We called for a world summit to rally forces against the Elder Dragon, and the Pale Tree generously agreed to host it. Bram, Kashmir and Rox agreed to appeal to the leaders of their home cities, though each expressed personal hesitations about it. Based off information Timmy sent me, I headed to the Iron Marches to investigate reports of Mordrum activity, where I acquired samples of dragon minion tissue that may help us understand our enemy better. The Arcane Consul refused to attend the World Summit without proof that Timmy's waypoint recalibration device works. I decided to help her acquire the components and resources necessary to complete the machine. Once I collected all the necessary items, she got the device running, but was unable to immediately recalibrate the waypoints themselves, as she says she needs more time. I went and met Bram in Hjolbrak, where I talked to Eir about the summit. She doesn't believe Nut would leave Hjolbrak as long as the Svanir are terrorizing the Shiver Peaks. I joined the local vigil to raid and disrupt the shamanic ritual that the Svanir were performing. Eir and Bram fought their way to meet me at the Dragon Totem so we can end it. Eir was confident that Nut would agree to attend the summit now that the Sons of Svanir have been beaten back. I could tell that things were still awkward between the two of them, but fighting alongside one another gave them some common ground to stand on. Later on, Rox and I met Ritlock outside the crypt in an effort to get Smother to the summit. Smother wasn't going anywhere as long as the ghosts were hunting the area. Ritlock had discovered the ritual that might send the ghost back to the mists, but it required his sword, a mass of souls to fuel it, and the pieces of Adalburn's crown which I agreed to obtain from across the countryside. We attempted the ritual, but it didn't go entirely as planned. Some spirits were drawn into the mists portal, but so was Ritlock's sword. Knowing that a full cleansing was impossible without the enchanted blade, he leapt in after it. Even though the ghost problem wasn't completely solved, it was lessened, so Smother agreed to attend the summit. I received a mail from Kashmir informing me that Queen Jenna's attendance is in jeopardy. Minister Estelle claimed that the Queen had secretly met with Scarlet and essentially gave her access to the watch nights. I found witnesses who would back up Queen's activities that day, and with Estelle's lies exposed, she had to cooperate with Countess Anise in future matters. After the waters were cleared, Kashmir was to escort the Queen to the summit alongside Konak, Anise's bodyguard. Timmy sent me a letter saying that she'd completed her waypoint recalibration, so I went there to check up on her. Her waypoint recalibration device was successful in returning the waypoints, and as a result are now uninteresting to Mordremat's minions. This action impressed Consular Plunt and his Arcane Consul associates so much that they wanted the device for themselves. She didn't like the idea of giving up her new invention that she worked so hard to develop, and she ended up running off with it. Bram and I went after Timmy, and when we caught up with her, she was surrounded by inquests who were trying to steal the invention. They'd incapacitated Scruffy and cornered her at the edge of a cliff. Bram and I gave them a sound beating before Plunt and his associates arrived. Timmy ultimately handed over the waypoint recalibration device since Plon's attendance at the summit hinged on it. I met my team at the Grove and represented the Pact for the World Summit. I convinced Newt, Queen Jenna, Chancellor Plont, and Smolder that we needed to unite against Mordremoth. However, the summit was cut short when the shadow of the dragon attacked the pear tree. After the assault, all the leaders were safe except for the pear tree. But before she fell unconscious, she showed me a vision of a golden land and a mysterious artifact. All leaders agreed to help the battle against Mordremoth, though each in their own way. One thing is clear now. Mordremoth is gaining power by the day. Its tendrils are spreading at an alarming rate, and no one is safe. It's my mission to decipher the vision and stop the dragon before it consumes everything. A high-ranking member of the Durman Priory asked me to help one of their explorers to investigate the ghost sightings at the wreckage of Fort Salma. I encountered a squad of restless spirits who had died during the prior Mordrem attack, one of which was Belinda, Marjorie's departed sister. They were traumatized in their last moments and mistook me for an enemy, so I had to put them down. The explorer was nearly killed by Belinda's ghost, but thanks to Marjorie's intervention, his life was spared. The sisters exchanged a few words before Belinda performed a ritual that would bound her soul with her sword, and now Marjorie has a powerful ancestral weapon she can train with, and her sister is finally at rest. I received a letter from thru summoning me to the Silver Wastes. I met with him at the Pact's new staging area. We discussed the planned assault on Mordremoth, but first he requested that I lead a small extraction team to retrieve Kate's squad from Camp Resolve. Before we left, Bram and I spoke, and he agreed to keep an eye on Timmy. She, who was inquiring with the Aspect Masters on the whereabouts of the Master of Peace. I met with my squad and located Connacht first. He'd been separated from Kate during their mission and was hiding in the shadows to avoid being spotted by Mordremoth. We made our way through the valley and rejoined Kate. We were all cornered by the dragon spawn, and rather than trying to fight our way back, we signaled for an extraction, and the Pact sent us a chopper that carried us back to safety. Once at camp, I asked the Pact tactician to point me to the explorer we rescued from Fort Salma. He provided us with a cipher that gained us access to the Durman's Priory inner research facilities. Once inside, we met up with a dwarf named Oglet Stonehealer, who had been hard at work researching the dragon's history. We had to find and hand him a mysterious hourglass that unexpectedly transported us to Glenn's lair. I explored its wondrous paths, putting down the creatures in our way. Whether they were guardians of the lair, or simply manifestations created by the magic that was freed upon her death, I am unsure. I did, however, saw echoes of past events. The Master of Peace has visited the lair before us, and he found what appeared to be Glenn's remaining egg. We returned to the Priory and discussed our findings with Ogled. Now more than ever, it's crucial that we find the Master of Peace and help him protect Glenn's egg before Mordremoth can find and destroy it. I met Logan, Ir, Zoja and Kate at camp to discuss the situation, letting them know that I will be focusing on my own leads instead of being a part of the main frontal assault. Although they were disappointed to hear the news, they understood my reasons. I met up with my friends to discuss where the Aspect Masters were headed. Luckily, Timmy caught sight of them heading out of camp by the southwest gate. On discovering that the Aspect Masters had left the camp, I picked up their trail and together with Rox and Kate tracked them to an underground passage where they were fighting for their lives against the Mordrem. We joined the fight, but we were too late to save the Master of Sun. After the fight, the Master of Lightning showed me a Zephyrite symbol that I can follow to track down their missing master. We followed the trail of symbols left by him to a tangled maze of thorny vines. Unfortunately, Mordrem had beaten us there. We fought a long and hard battle trying to protect the Master of Peace, but he was mortally wounded in the event. In his dying breath, he requested that I safeguard the egg he had taken from Glenn's lair, but at this point point, Kate had already disappeared with it. I needed to know her reasons, so I headed to the pear tree for aid, and even though she was still recovering from the damage done by the shadow of the dragon, she managed to give me 4 seeds that I needed to plant in various locations which would help me view some of Kate's memories. After planting the first seed, the memory was in the grove itself, and I saw Kate and the firstborn over 20 years ago. A half-naked secondborn let us know that his friends had been captured by what he described as imps. At the end of the memory, Kate and Fowlin, yes, the leader of the Nightmare Court today, were racing off to rescue them. At the Metrica province, I planted the second seed to enter Kate's memory of the time she and Fowlin saved the group of secondborns from my own acquaintance Vorp, experimenting on the poor Sylvari, Connacht being one of them. As they were leaving, Fowlin mentioned her intentions to travel to the Silver Wastes in a pursuit of a Sylvari named Wayne, who was going there for a research with the Centurion tribes. I returned to Camp Resolve to ask if any centaurs have ever been found in the area, and I was directed to the far Silver Wastes. Once there, I planted the third seed and experienced a centaur massacre through Kate's eyes. The memory was so horrible to witness, but it provided us with a clue to where she may have taken the egg. Right before the memory ended, Fowlin and Kate gave chase to Wayne to a sealed cave. Once we followed her there, we were blocked by a magical barrier. I met Marjorie at the Dermont Priory Special Collections to consult with Ogden once more about the arcane ward blocking our access. Ogden identified the barrier as made by an ancient serpent race called the Forgotten. He broke the wax seal of an old tome, and the echo of a long-dead hero named Turai also appeared. Marjorie and I had to support the Echo as he retraced events of the past, and in return he gifted us with the Divine Fire. Ogden believed the Divine Fire would open the seal in the mysterious cave, allowing us to continue pursuing Kate's memories. Logan asked me to reunite with them at camp, where the Pact was just about to set out to defeat Mordremoth before he fully awakens and gets the chance to wreak havoc. Before anything more can happen, however, Mordrem attacked the camp. The camp got nearly overrun before I managed to light the signal fire to call in reinforcements and defeat the Mordrem. I said goodbye to Troarn and the remaining members of Destiny's Edge, as Rox, Bram, and Kashmir all went to the cave. Once at the cave, the Divine Fire broke the seal, and we ventured into the subterranean chamber where I planted the last seed, and witnessed firsthand as Kate discovered the secret that the Sylvari were intended to be minions of Mordremoth. A secret that the Pale Tree and Wayne had kept from Fowlin and the others. To keep this secret from Fowlin, and at Wayne's insistence, Kate killed her. In doing so, she has placed the burden of the secret upon herself. I had no time to absorb this before we finally caught up with Kate. She tried to reassure us of her intentions, but our confrontation was cut short by the shadow of the dragon once again. But this time, I was successful in killing Mordremoth's champion once and for all. However, in the chaos of the battle, Kate managed to slip away with the egg yet again. But will we be able to find her and retrieve the egg? Or will it be better off in Kate's hands? We'll have to find out in the next episode. A huge thank you to everyone who is supporting the channel, and a massive shout out to everyone who made it to the end. If you haven't seen the previous episodes, feel free to do so, or if you want to keep occupied until the next episode, make sure to subscribe and check out my shorts playlist. I'll see you in the next one, but until then, be wise, very wise.